Hello and welcome everyone. My name's Jemima and I work in the international schools team at Pearson. I'd like to give everyone a warm welcome and thank you for taking the time to join us today's webinar on early years education. We hope it'll be useful and inspiring to you all. Before we get started, I'd just like to go over some quick housekeeping rules. So if you could keep your background noise to a minimum by muting your microphone. It should already be muted because it is a webinar. And if you want to communicate with us at any point, just use the chat box. And for any questions, please use the Q&A. There'll be some time at the end of the session for us to go through these. And this session is recorded and will be available to view again on demand. So I'll hand you over to our presenters, Kevin and Leah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for signing in today. We're really excited to have you here. We're going to talk a little bit about early years and the importance of this pretty key phase. So we're going to have a talk about Pearson EdXL and iProgress and the continuity that provides for learners and how early years fits into this. And then we're going to have a look at what early years actually is and why it's so important, and have a look at some of the research behind that. And then we're going to move on to have a look at Pearson's early years program and how it helps embed the key learnings and really important points from that research into your schools. And then there's an opportunity at the end for questions as well. So before we begin, a quick slide just introducing your presenters for today. Over to Leah quickly. Would you like to just say a few words?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Leah. I'm a product manager in the international curriculum team at Pearson. I've been at Pearson for around 5 years, working across both UK and international markets. I'm currently leading on our international primary and lower secondary curriculum and resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. And I'm Kevin Hyatt. I'm the Head of International Teaching and Learning Resources for Pearson EdXL. I don't know why I felt the need to read that off the slide. I should know that. And I've been working in and around education for a while as a teacher, as a senior leader, an assessment specialist, and then in various educational publishing roles as well. And I'm really excited to be involved with our international team and really proud of the work on early years that's been done as well. So let's start off by having a look at iProgress in early years. So really quickly, just as an overview, and we won't spend too long on this, iProgress is our complete series for 3 to 19-year-olds for international schools. It includes iPrimary, iLower Secondary, International GCSE, GCSE, AS, IAL, A-Level, and it helps to provide a consistent learning journey for students and teachers everywhere in the world. And as the UK's largest awarding organisation, Pearson EdXL is well placed to provide qualifications and learning pathways that are recognised as being closely aligned to the British educational system. Our Pearson Early Years support currently includes 2 years of teaching in English, maths and the world around us, and more about what that means in a minute. So just a really quick snapshot here of what it actually includes. So our iProgress programme includes complete year-by-year curricula, teachers' guides, schemes of work, day-by-day lesson planning, progress tests, professional development, PD, and supporting courseware as well. And for centres that are interested in early years, our iPrimary centres receive it as part of their subscription, but it's also available as a standalone with access to the early years content only. All of these centres will also receive professional development to support it and access to iPrimary's Year 1 to aid transition and progress. And also we know that some centres actually spread early years out over 3 years. So having that end point so you can see what you're working towards is really useful. So that's a quick overview about what our early years course is. So on to have a look at some of our research. So what is early years? The Pearson EdXL iPrimary Reception Early Years curricula is a 2-year programme for children aged 3 to 5. So the programme helps teachers understand the level that children should be working at and how learning progresses over time. Research has shown that effective education at this age does ensure students are prepared to progress with the skills they need to engage with the world around them. But before we go into detail, I do have a question for everyone. So I'd be really interested if you could pop your answers in the chat. what is early years education, and why do children go to reception? What is the point of reception? So I can't actually see the chat, so if Jemima or Leah could help out here. So if we could just pop answers in the chat. What's the point of reception?
So we've got some answers coming in already. Preparation for primary, learning through play.
Cool.
Some thoughts, socializing with others, improving skills. Formative years of learning as well.
I'm loving all of these, and these are absolutely brilliantly sensible and correct, and the type of things we'd want to hear.
Good ones in now as well.
Excellent.
They're all coming in.
Yep.
Instilling values, building personality, setting foundations for life. It's a stage where children are developing holistically, you know, getting that pre-education before grade 1 as well. It's when the mind is developing, grasping basic social skills. Loads and loads. Oh, there's a really nice one. It says flavors of life ahead. Like that.
Oh, I love these. I hope we can record, like, note these down somewhere as well and get a record for chat, because these are all brilliant answers. Yeah. And I love that. These are such formative, important years. But I think sometimes as people working in this field or early years practitioners, we come up against some of the different perceptions of this age. So I'm just going to share some of the answers that I've heard over the course of teaching, research, and being a foundation stage coordinator. And these have been from other teachers, from parents, sometimes from head teachers as well. So babysitting, a waste of money, easy, just play, has no real impact, too hard. We've had both easy and too hard. And we do come up against this perception. So I think it's important to just delve into why you've all given such good answers and why we don't actually believe what's on this slide. So what is early years education? I'll just revisit this really quickly. Early years education often refers to the formative years from birth to around age 7, and it includes a whole range of developmental milestones. So we focus on the 2 years immediately preceding year one. So we call this kindergarten and pre-K, or reception and nursery, and we refer to it often simply as early years, but commonly early years can cover a much wider range. And we're really focused on in-school, formal or semi-formal settings and 3 key subjects in our programme. But to us, early years education does aim to give children the best possible start to their schooling and their lives and set them up for future success. This is the age where kids are learning how to learn. They're developing new relationships, new skills in a safe but exciting, new, different environment outside the home. So we're going to have a look at the importance of early education here. So the programme helps teachers understand the level that children should be working at and how learning progresses over time. Research has shown that effective education at this age does ensure students are prepared to progress with the skills they need. And extensive research has shown that high quality early education plays a really significant role in promoting children's development, both cognitively and socially. And although it's not a useful measure for individuals, there is actually a correlation between achievement and learning outcomes at age 5 and later GCSE results, and by extension, later achievement as well. That means that this is absolutely key. It's really hard to catch up if you're left behind here. Reception and early years is where students learn how to learn, as I said, how to interact with the world and with others in a supportive environment, without that safety net, sometimes lack, provided in their home life, and with lots more variables than a typical home can provide. An effective education at this age ensures students are ready and able to access the curriculum from year 1 onwards, and are prepared for the increased requirements of many modern teaching programs as well. It ensures students are equipped with the building blocks of the necessary skills required to engage with the world around them. So, with all that in mind, and the fact there is a host of research out there saying that actually this is an incredibly important age, and it is going to make a difference, and we should address it, and we should try and do it properly. We carried out a lot of research into what does good practice look like this age and what impact can it have. We researched best practice, market needs, and teacher expertise as well. So some of the research that went into answering these questions consisted of reading and reflecting on current academic research, including research commissioned for other Pearson initiatives and programs. We used conversation, questioning, observations, and work and research with early years practitioners and experts in real settings. And conversation, questioning, and observations with our own international curriculum schools, as well as English national curriculum teachers and school leaders as well. And at every stage of development and every stage of this research was a review and a revision cycle, keeping all of these stakeholders involved in development of the resources of a programme, of all the support, and ensuring that the feedback was incorporated in the resources and the curriculum. So this research was carried out over the course of, well, the research which pulled together a lot of other research happened over the course of about 18 months. But some of the research which we lent on had been going on for 10 or 15 or even 20 years, tracking cohorts and their achievement over many years. But it came out with some agreements. So some of the key findings from our research. Outstanding early years improves later achievement. This was pretty unarguable. Some really interesting and long research pieces, and if we share the slides afterwards, there's some links to some of them, do show that this is just the case. It will make a difference later on. And the majority of sources did identify the importance of this phase. So I joke about some of those answers we've had earlier, but fortunately, most people now do accept this as an important age. Subject experts and teachers also showed a clear preference for a UK curriculum style experience, and they identify that this would and should be different to later, more formal settings as well. These are children who are just entering a new experience. Developmentally, they're not in the same place as a child 2-3 years older, and the difference there between a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old is some ways more extreme between a 10-year-old and an 18-year-old. And then preparation for year 1 being key. Over 80% of school-based stakeholders placed preparation for that formal education, which they're not quite ready for yet in year 1, as their top requirement for an early years or reception programme. Now, this was interesting as well. Structured progression and assessment. Progression seems obvious. An assessment can be a scary word at this age, but we'll look at that later. But 90% of school-based stakeholders, as well as all subject experts, identified that this structured progression and assessment was absolutely vital. Knowing where children are going, where they are, and knowing how you know that as well. And then finally, everybody, almost everybody, said the top 3 subjects were English, maths, and everything else. So we've grouped everything else together, and Leah's going to speak about that in a little bit, under the heading The World Around Us. But there's actually some really key developmental things in there as well. Things like social, emotional, physical development, development of early questioning, and lots of other really useful things. But despite the agreement and the similarities that we've spoken about there, international early years and reception settings do vary hugely in terms of staff training and confidence, class size, and the level of adult support available, the availability of digital resources, interactive whiteboards, iPads, computers, the availability of physical resources. And interestingly as well, and I think this goes back to some of the answers that we've heard previously, like babysitting or too easy or too hard, the perceived understanding of early years and reception settings, techniques and methodology amongst colleagues and parents. So although there are always agreements, there's these differences too, and these are things that we had to take account of creating curriculum and support. And this variance occurred not only across, but within countries, and sometimes within school chains or even within schools. So with all of that coming together, we looked at all this research, We considered it really carefully. We looked at the key findings, the agreements, the differences. And using all of the research and all of the experts, we produced our own early years programme, which we hope very much will address a lot of these needs. I'm going to pass over to Leah now, who's going to talk about the details of the programme.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. That was some really useful sort of context and background. So yes, like Kevin said, we took those findings, we went to sort of pedagogical experts, subject experts, all the stakeholders, and worked closely with them when we were developing our early years programme. So at each stage of development for each product, each piece of content, we utilised that research. As Kevin said, we had those consistent review stages, all those touch points throughout the development of the early years programme to ensure that it was made appropriate for both teachers and learners. It's something, that kind of review and revision process is something that we aim to do across all of our products, and it just helps to ensure that we're creating some really supportive materials that are usable within our markets and help to support the delivery of best practice. So with all that in mind, we created our early years programme. So early years education includes a whole range of developmental milestones from birth to around age 7, which I think Kevin touched upon. But our early years programme is really focused on those 2 years of education immediately before year 1, which across the world, I think Kevin said this as well, has loads and loads of different names: reception, nursery, K, pre-K, but it's those first 2 years of content that we are looking at. So our early years curricula is broken down into 3 subject areas. So we've got maths, which dives into the sort of initial building of mathematical curiosity and resilience, whilst introducing some key mathematical concepts. We've got English, that encourages sort of early language development, particularly for second language users. And it also encourages an exploration in using English as well. And then finally, we've got the world around us, which is that sort of other category, which focuses on developing early research skills, questioning skills, and those sort of more transferable emotional, social, cognitive skills. So I think a lot of you mentioned in your chat messages when you thought about what early years was for, it's a lot of those building skills of talking to other children, those emotional, those social skills, building that sort of confidence in younger learners. So new for this school year as well, the early years subscription also now includes the first year of our iPrimary curriculum. So that's 3 years of content that's included in our early years programme. And the reason that we wanted to do that was to ensure that you could see that clear progression journey from reception into year 1 that's behind sort of all of our resources and teaching support and fits into that iProgress story that Kevin mentioned. So what is that support for our early years programme? So the foundation of the whole programme is our curricula. That includes age-related expectations that provide clear benchmarks for progression across each of those different subjects. We've also got schemes of work that group together those complementary objectives into a suggested order of teaching throughout the year, alongside some suggested activities as well. We've then got the full lesson planning, which is ready to sort of pick up and go to use in class, which provides, complete suggestion of activities to cover those objectives lesson by lesson. We've also got the progress tests. So these are a really good opportunity for benchmarking progress. And there's professional development alongside all of this. So underpinning all of these resources to ensure that teachers are, fully equipped to deliver this curriculum and to best utilise the resources that we have. And there's also workbooks that run alongside all of this teacher support, which are for learners, available both in print and digitally as well. So let's look at these in a bit more detail. So the curriculum documents, you've got an example of one on the screen there. They give really clear objectives across different areas. So there's a really explicit progression and preparation for the first year of iPrimary year 1, or for any English language curriculum. So just as an example, you can see how we build on the objective in reception 1 for following short basic statements given by the teacher, to year 1 where the learner is expected to follow short basic classroom instructions supported by pictures or gestures. So this kind of preparation and progression is embedded entirely through all of our curricula and throughout the entirety of our iPrimary, lower secondary, right up to GCSE and A-level curricula. So there's really explicit preparation for later education and those foundational skills that you develop in the early years curriculum that ensure that you're best prepared for that next step. There's a real focus in our curricula, sorry, Kevin, on helping children learn how to learn. So within English particularly, we look at supporting that communication and language developmental writing and mark making, early reading. Our maths curriculum supports mathematical development, understanding. You know, it's not just counting, addition, subtraction, shape work, but it includes pattern recognition and sequencing and things like that. And the world around us explicitly supports the development of questioning, those early research skills, as I said, but also those problem solving skills to try and lay the foundation for developing the right kind of mindset for critical thinking and supporting those transferable social, emotional and physical development skills as well. And that brings us on to the schemes of work. So the schemes of work take those curriculum objectives and put them into complementary groups that work really well as topics that are designed to appeal to younger learners. So these schemes can be really useful in your planning. They can show the coverage of each topic. They give you an overview of suggested activities. They give you some key questions to ask throughout the topic to help support and prompt learners. And they provide a really good framework for with the opportunity to create your own planning from the scheme of work as well. So you could utilize the scheme of work or you could adapt it to suit your particular setting as well. In addition to the schemes of work, and if you're looking for more support, we also provide full comprehensive lesson planning. So this is, of course, also adaptable, it's flexible, it's designed to be, you know, you can edit it and tailor it to your own needs. And we'd encourage teachers to actively sort of tailor it to suit their children as needed. But it does give you a really good structure to work from. And the lesson planning matches the topics and provides detailed day-by-day teaching guidance, as well as a carousel of recommended activities to support current best practice around early years teaching. So they're designed to be, as I said, ready to pick up and go, so you can take them into a lesson and sort of use them as they are. But they are easily adaptable by teachers who are wanting to sort of personalize the learning further. They provide that structure and progression, ensuring all those objectives are covered within the curricula. And they also provide that confidence to teachers that there's a consistency across your early years programme. So everyone can have this access to ensuring that the curriculum objectives are covered, that you've got a well thought out sort of range of activities. So there's a consistency in your approach there, regardless of if you want to then go and adapt and tailor it to suit your needs. And it provides a huge range of options for teachers as well, regardless of your setting. And so each lesson is linked to a theme for that series of lessons, and it's built around a shared introduction. And then you have a sort of carousel of activities intended to further that development in the curriculum area. So there's loads of different carousel activity options. And they're, you know, depending on their support, the resourcing preferences and the needs of your learners, you can sort of pick and choose those carousel activities as well. So to help support planning, to help support the next steps as you plan your learners' journey, it's really important to understand where exactly they are in that development. It's something that came up in the research. It's something that is perhaps quite surprising that you want to build in that assessment, but I think it's that understanding piece and knowing how your students are progressing at this early stage. It's not necessarily giving them the sort of formal assessment that is the important part. It's the teacher's understanding of their development. So our progress tests are matched to our schemes of work and our lesson plans, and they help you do just that. So the tests are designed around an information-rich image, as you can see on the screen. They're designed to sort of stimulate discussion with the learner. So teachers are provided with a script of questions linked to the objectives that are taught during that topic, and there's space to record observations and comments, and that is all accompanied by guidance around, you know, children's possible answers, and it's designed to very much be a fun conversation for the child. It's designed to sort of help teachers assess progress without overburdening these younger learners, and we have a really useful guidance document which covers how these tests are designed to be led, as they are not necessarily similar in format to the later sort of assessments that you get. So there's a lot of guidance and support around these assessments and how to run them in class. So that's a lot of content and support that we have available to help deliver our curriculum. But what's there to actually help you in utilising those resources? So we've got a dedicated early years professional development training module that covers all of the key pedagogies, the teaching techniques. It looks into more detail at all of the structure and the curricula and the progression over the years. And there's a deeper dive into some of those lesson plans, looking at how you can adapt it based on your setting. And it also goes into how you can run formative and summative assessments. So you're not expected to sort of get to grips with all this by yourself. There's absolutely the support there from us to help guide you through those resources and help you utilize those to the best effect. So what other resources are there? So on top of the curricula and all that teacher support, I wanted to talk about the learner-facing resources that accompany this sort of teaching and the delivery of that curriculum. So all of our curricula are supported by workbooks for iPrimary English and the world around us. We have our activity books, and for maths, we recommend the Power Maths reception journals. And they're all designed to work alongside the curriculum, but they can be used as standalone resources as well. So these resources have really clear adult-facing explanations of learning. So it's easiest to help the students as they work through the activities that are designed to support and engage them. There's a focus on developing those motor control skills as well. So in terms of actually mark making and making meaningful marks on a page, developing their sort of control of holding a pencil. So these workbooks are also a really nice record of achievement for parents to see as well, and to sort of have them see what they've been learning in a certain week and look at their progress as well. Our English and World Around Us are also available digitally as front of class tools too, as part of our subscription. So they can be sort of put front of class as students complete those activities as well. So I realise I've talked quite a lot. So what are the key takeaways from everything that we've spoken about today? I'll run through this and then I'll open up the sort of chat and go through some of the questions with Kevin. And yeah, we'll hopefully answer some of those questions for you. So thanks very much for listening for today. So our early years programme, hopefully the key takeaways that you have from today's webinar is that this is a comprehensive and market tested programme. What do we mean by comprehensive? It's got all the different facets of support that you need. It's got lesson planning, schemes of work, curricula, assessments, resources, PD across 3 different subjects. And it's got that built-in explicit progression as well. So even at this age, preparing for the next stage of learning, building in those soft skills that really set learners up for the future. And finally, it's designed to be used flexibly. So we know there's a range of different settings globally, huge range of options to cover all the different level of experience and support. And we've tried to make sure that we've built that in throughout all of our resources. So thank you very much for listening to us talk all about our Pearson Early Years programme. I think we'll stop here and take some questions.
We've had 2 questions in the Q&A box. The first one is how to deal with child behaviour disorders.
So do you want to take this or shall I, Leah?
You go for it and I can add.
Okay. I suppose it very much depends on the child, and the disorder and what we consider to be a disorder and what the root cause of it is. A lot of I don't think there is necessarily an easy answer here. If there is actually a diagnosable issue, that's very different. And I should make that really clear. If there's a diagnosable issue, then it is something that has to be diagnosed and addressed properly through you might have an SEN coordinator, you might have a medical link, a doctor. But a lot of behavior issues at early ages like this come around lack of clear structure or lack of clear expectations and consistency. It can also come from children not feeling especially secure, because this is a big change for a lot of children. So they've moved from a home environment where they're potentially very, very familiar to a new environment where they're forced to interact with a much wider group of people. As adults, we know you can't get on with everyone, but that's hard for a child to accept that suddenly they're forced into a situation with people who are unfamiliar or perhaps unliked. So I think consistency, clear expectations, letting them know that it is a safe and supportive environment, letting them feel listened to, are all absolutely vital. And all of that being consistent across all adults in the setting is important as well. It's really hard for a young child who's already moved to a new situation to suddenly have to cope with different adults with different expectations as well. So within the classroom, consistency, safety, security are the best things. But yeah, just to be clear, if there is something diagnosable there, that may well require other things like one-on-one support or other adjustments to be made as well.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is the fact that the entire sort of early years program is designed to be a really positive learning experience. It shouldn't turn into a negative experience. So I think there's a lot that can be done around, and this dives into sort of best practice teaching strategies that you can definitely pick up in our sort of professional development modules. But there's a lot around reframing sort of instructions and commands into positives, and taking sort of, instead of, stop shouting, stop doing this, it's reframing that and giving the behavior that you want them to have. So sort of please talk more quietly, please do this, and also modeling out that behavior as well. So there's a lot that can be done in terms of reframing. I'm definitely not the expert there, but there's a lot of experts out there. And what I would say is obviously building up your own support for that behavior as well, and talking to other teachers is really vital here as well, because no one person has the right answer for this. It's all about sort of building up your resources and having a range of different tactics and techniques that you can use to manage that behavior, because it might not work for one child, but it might work for another child. So it's having a sort of arsenal of things that you can use, and that is something that I think our early years curricula and PD and support provides. It's that range of different activities to help tackle those challenges.
Thank you for that. Then we have another question from Vanessa. How is it different from the iPrimary programme?
So it's actually very similar in terms of all the support and consistency that you get. It's just focusing on those early years, pre-year one. So our iPrimary programme focuses on years 1 to 6, and it's got the exact same level of support. So it's got those curriculum documents, it's got the schemes of work, the lesson plans, teacher guides, the assessments all built in. So actually our early years is a really great preparation step for progressing on to iPrimary, because it sort of familiarizes not only the learners but the teachers with that style and consistency in approach. I don't know if you'd add anything more there, Kevin.
No, you've absolutely got it. In terms of a comprehensive coverage and the progression, it's the same, but in terms of how it is actually works in the classroom, it's different. It's age appropriate. It's based on research for a specific age. No, you've covered it all.
Yeah. Oh, and iPrimary covers a range of different topics as well. So you've got English, maths, science, computing, and global citizenship. But at early years, you just have English, maths, and the world around us.
Right. And then we have another question as are the worksheets the only way for engagement?
Absolutely not. I don't think so. Kevin?
No,
Over to you.
no. So if you actually have a look at lesson planning in there, a lot of it is built around that best practice. So Leah was speaking about the carousel. So a lot of learning at this age is very physical. There's learning through doing, but it's also multi-sensory. So not just doing, there's seeing, there's listening, there's reading, there's playing with things, there's talking. So each of these carousel activities will be linked to the theme, the topic, but also the curriculum objectives. And they're a different way for the child to learn and experience that lesson or that sequence of lessons. So they move around these different engaging activities. So one of them might be a worksheet, it might be something to do with the workbooks, but a lot of the others will be something different. It might be listening to a story, it might be building. So it's very varied. So there's lots of ways to engage there.
Fab. And then we have another question. Why is Power Maths of preference over Abacus?
It's a good question. I think Power Maths is the sort of latest best practice we have from the UK, but it definitely depends on your setting and your sort of requirements. Power Maths is the most updated course that we have. It's more recently released and it follows all the best practice guidance and strategies that are set out in the UK national curriculum as well. Kevin, would you have anything to add on that?
No, it just reflects a slightly more modern pedagogy, and at
Yeah.
early years specifically, Power Maths is more closely aligned with what our research showed worked internationally. When you then go into year one, I mean, our Power Maths reception journals and also our maths planning would prepare you to either do Abacus or Power Maths. But at this age, we felt it was the most appropriate.
And then we have another question. How to incorporate play-based into the iPrimary curriculum?
So I think that's around sort of how to incorporate the sort of carousel of activities in terms of the early years curriculum. Let me know if I've misunderstood that, but that is all about utilising those lesson plans that have the ready-made sort of carousel of activities there. So I'm just looking at one example now that gives you a range of different carousel activities. So one of them involves paper and pencils and sort of making marks on a page. One of them involves sort of cutting and sticking. One of them involves looking at books, doing self-portraits, things like that. So you're moving around the class in groups and rotating between these activities to keep learners engaged, but they're all sort of working towards complementary objectives that build upon those skills and help them progress.
That. And then we have another question. Why does Power Maths not seem to synchronise with early years maths planning on Active Learn? They seem to follow two different schemes.
They do.
Yeah.
So our reception planning follows our own international progression, and it works alongside the Power Maths journals, not the rest of Power Maths reception. Power Maths reception as a whole program is designed specifically for the English national curriculum, where typically, but not always, you'd have a more homogenous, samey experience in school in terms of resourcing, in terms of teacher training, in terms of parental expectations. So we've taken the most useful bits of that for journals, and that works alongside our planning.
Thank you. And then we've got another question on how do we conduct the progress tests for our early years?
Yeah, so there's a lot of guidance around this. It's something that we've produced this year, as we often do get questions around how these assessments can be set up and run, but they're designed to be more sort of conversational. So the idea is you would print out that illustration, you'd either have talk to students one-on-one or in smaller groups, and you'd have your space to record observations in your script of questions that you would ask. So you'd take them to a quiet area of the classroom and explain that you're going to ask them some questions that are connected to this image. You can start an initial conversation by asking them what they can see in the image, you know, what's happening in this picture, what can you see? And you might find that some of the curriculum objectives are actually covered off already in those initial conversations. And then you can go on and ask each question in turn. You'll provide thinking time for the student to respond. You can prompt the students and make notes of their responses as you go. You can make note of any misconceptions, any other observations as well. And there's a lot of guidance around the kind of prompting and support you can provide as well. So, for example, if a student answers a question incorrectly, we recommend providing the correct answer straight away to address any misconceptions straight away. So don't sort of take that away and think we need to come back to that. Just address it and sort of tackle it straight away. There's lots of other ideas around prompting and support, but overall the test should be sort of a really positive experience. It should be a conversation between the teacher and the student that is facilitated by that script of questions. And if students begin to sort of talk about other related ideas or aspects, or, you know, they start to lose interest, we could refocus the conversation, or you might need to be mindful that they're not quite ready to sort of do this yet. You might need to come back to it later. And that is absolutely fine. At this level, you're just trying to gauge how they're progressing in terms of those curriculum objectives. But as I mentioned, there's a full teacher guidance document for those reception tests.
Great, thank you. And then, is there an age limit for the students to learn Year 1 course?
No, there's no age limit. So, I mean, like reception, our early years course is built around the children being roughly 3 to 5, and kind of that's developmentally fairly important. But there's no age limit with any of this. Like, you could shift it to fit your school.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say that a lot of schools do shift it, and they utilize our structure, but they'll adapt it to their own needs. So it's definitely been done before.
Thank you. And then, are the printed reception books available in countries other than the UK?
100%, yes. They are available everywhere.
Then we've got another question. How can we make phonics effective for kindergarten, and what kind of patterns can be followed to make kids understand in a better way?
So, I mean, if we're looking at synthetic phonics here, so I think the important thing with synthetic phonics is training and consistency, and it can't be done bitterly. So if you want phonics learning to work, I would suggest you follow a program. Something like Bug Club Phonics. Obviously, I'd say that it's Pearson, but Bug Club Phonics, where you've got that structure, you've got videos, you've got training. Synthetic phonics is a thing in any language. It's based around the phonetic building blocks of that language, and it's also based around the fact that students are getting exposure to those sounds outside of the classroom as well. So synthetic phonics can be a really tricky way to learn a language if you're not in a purely English-speaking country. Like, you get lots of inconsistencies there, which is why if you're going to use synthetic phonics, it is a really good idea to follow a scheme, and also to ensure that all adults who talk to the children are familiar with that scheme and familiar with the sounds and familiar with the way the language is built as well.
I'd say that also with Bug Club Phonics, you've got the digital element as well. So you've got the ebooks that have audio and read to me options, so you can hear that audio, and you've got sort of interactive hotspots where you can launch those specific sounds together. So it goes through the sounds that you're going to hear in a certain book, and you can listen to them. It talks you through how you can blend those sounds. So there's a lot of support there within the actual phonics course, digitally and in print as well.
Thank you, guys. And then we've got another question. Can you explain about children coming to school as a second language learner?
Yeah, definitely. So all of our sort of curricula is designed for EAL students, so students who are non-native speakers. It's not an English language curriculum. It's not a English language teaching ELT curriculum, but it's designed for second language learners, but with those first language outcomes. So with all of the curricula and the resources, there's a lot of training and support available for EAL learners. So and teaching to classrooms where you've got a mixed range of learners, some people who can speak English, some who can't. So there's a lot of training and support around delivery of an English language curriculum to non-native speakers, and in those early years especially, that's where that support is really built in. I don't know if you'd say any more, Kevin, on the EAL support.
No, I mean, only at this age in particular, like everyone is developing their language skills. Everyone is at a very similar level. And like at the very early stages of this curriculum and these resources, it's all about that exposure to language. So everyone's building. And it's also at an age where children are just absolute sponges. Like they learn more easily if we enable them to do so at this age than they would if, say, I moved somewhere where I didn't speak language at my age. So it's a good age to be a second language learner.
Yeah, and there's a lot of focus in our English language curricula on using English and experimenting with English. So it's not as necessarily prescriptive in its approach. It's encouraging utilization of the language and getting that experience, which I think is really important at this early age as well.
Thank you. And then we've got another one. Which books can we use for a reception class? Any recommendations?
So we do have some recommendations of books within the lesson planning, things that will relate to that particular topic or theme. If you were looking at more broadly storybooks, Bug Club actually has, which is our reading scheme, has a whole selection of age-appropriate, language-appropriate books for reception. There's a huge number of them there.
And in terms of just general activity workbooks, we've got those across English and the world around us as well.
Thank you, guys. And then are there any specific homework activities that you recommend?
Leah, were you going to take this? Sorry.
No, I was just going to mention that all these sort of homework activities and extra activities for students who might need more support, there's suggestions throughout the lesson planning, I would say. So there's a range of different activities that you could suggest there. So I don't think I could just name one, but maybe you can, Kevin.
No, I mean, I think formal homework at this age is really, really tricky because you're putting a lot of onus on a very young student. And we do that, but we do that in a very kind of structured, gradual, supportive way. I think if you wanted to set homework, Liz, right, I mean, there's loads of extra suggestions and extension activities and those carousel activities as well. There's very purposefully choose from these or choose free from these. So there are other activities you could set for that child to do at home if you felt it was appropriate.
It's more an extension of that classroom learning, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And is there any differentiation in delivery of lessons according to your teachers' guides?
Well, a lot of the progression, learning, and reception is through observation of what that child is doing. So those carousel activities, there's purposefully, they're purposely very varied. So you might get one child who excels at formal writing. You might get another who enjoys learning through doing or building or creating. So the differentiation comes through the experience there. It's not like later years where it's like, they write 5 sentences, they write 3 sentences, this person has a TA. So it's just a little bit different at this age. But there are multiple ways for students at different levels to access the learning.
Yeah, and I think that's where those tests and assessments that we provide can be really useful in making those observations and seeing, which different levels the students are at.
Thank you. And then is there guided reading provided for early years? I think you might have answered this one.
I think that takes us back to Bug Club. So that's our reading scheme, our structured reading scheme. So I'd recommend having a look at that. And I think we have free trials available.
Thank you. And then in assessment, how much observation do we use without stressing out or making them feel like they're being watched, giving them a natural environment?
So that's where I would say it's definitely more of a conversation, and it's still within the classroom, but just a quieter area of the classroom. And it definitely shouldn't feel like an intense interview, because I mean, that's scary enough for us as adults, I think, sometimes. So no, absolutely not. I think you can use your sort of best judgment there in terms of how you're sort of prompting and how you sort of utilize that script to structure your conversations. But it should definitely be a positive experience and something that is relatively informal. You can gently refocus the conversation if students start to go off on tangents, but it's definitely more a conversation. It should be a back and forth, a dialogue, I think.
Take it back to something Leah said earlier when we were talking about behaviour at the start of this as well, and creating a really positive, everything being a positive environment. I mean, you're normalizing them being around adults who are interacting with them, who are involved in what they're doing, who are helping them, who are watching what they're doing. So there's also that aspect of assessment which isn't those recorded progress tests. It is just, oh, I've seen Leah do X today. Oh, I'm going to make a note of that because I know that's one of her developmental milestones. It's just normal. It's a lovely, positive environment. They're used to interacting with the adults in the classroom. It's seen as a positive thing.
That's great. And then if a child has not reached the milestone of the year programme, do they need to redo the year before going to year one?
I mean, it's very much a school-based decision. I mean, I would say mostly no. I think if a student isn't hitting any of these developmental milestones with all of the support, professional development and everything else, then it is worth having a look at other interventions that you can take there, because there might be other issues and it might be worth just investigating those a little bit more. But I would say as long as the students hit around kind of like 70, 80% plus of these, I mean, it's not rigid. Not all children develop at the same rate. There's a big variation at this age. So as long as you hit around 70 or 80%, I think just note where the gaps are as you move into year one, because there's something you might want to have more intervention for later.
I would also, to add to that, I would say that utilizing our program and the assessments and making observations against the curriculum objectives is going to give you early indications of those gaps, and you're going to be sort of aware of that way before you get to the end of the program. So I don't think if you were following our program, you'd sort of reach the end of that year and think, oh no, this student hasn't achieved anything. You definitely have earlier awareness of that, I think, and that's something that those assessments and looking against the curriculum objectives can provide for you. So I think there's sort of intervention that can be done before the end of the year to prevent that, if that makes sense.
Thank you. And then to teach a story, practice questions are included in activity books, but related stories are not provided in any section and also in Active Learn. Where can we get these stories to teach reception 2?
So sometimes related stories or other supporting stories are recommended. And most of the time, these are like fairly common old folk tales or fairy stories, or things that we very purposefully chosen that can be found simply by Googling. So you can find a lot of it, almost all of those additional texts for free by searching online.
Thank you. And then do you have a specific phonics program by Pearson for our early years?
Yeah, I think we might have covered this one, but yeah, that would definitely be Bug Club Phonics. That's recommended there.
And then how easy is it to integrate the curricula with the IB early years?
So, I mean, IB early years is a very, 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 very loose program, which tends to be interpreted by individual schools. So fairly easily. I know that's a rubbish answer, but like you'd have to do a little bit of work yourself. But I mean, you're going to hit all of those requirements if you were to do our EYFS program.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure there are schools that definitely have done that in the past as well, and it's worked well alongside other curricula.
Fab. And why is computing and global citizenship not taught in early years?
It's a good question. I think just based on the research that we had conducted and the teachers and schools that we'd spoken to, we pulled out those skills in that sort of soft science, the world around us. So I think that is a really good preparation for both of those subjects, the global citizenship and computing. I think what the world around us does is, as I said, build in those early skills of research and problem solving and sort of how to build relationships and communicate clearly and things like that. So it establishes the sort of foundational knowledge that you'd need to then go on and progress to those subjects. I just think at this age, they don't need the specific content knowledge, but those skills that are within those subjects of computing and global citizenship are definitely covered in the world around us.
Yeah, I mean, I'd focus on your word there, foundational. Like, you've got those foundational English language skills, you've got your mathematical understanding, and we know from experience that everything else is kind of built on these. And then the world around us is your soft skills, your transferable questioning, your cognitive, social, emotional, physical development. And this is the absolute bedrock of all of the later learning when you then do start to kind of go into really subject specific knowledge.
Thank you, guys. And in the case where we are already using the abacus, how can we migrate to power maths? How can the migration to power maths impact on the cognitive development of a child?
So it's interesting. So I mean, like if you are, I mean, they follow the same broad progression. There's a different methodology in there. So if you're already partway through like early years, I would suggest, leave it. See how you can map abacus to our additional planning or do English in the world around us. Because there's a lot for children to think about at that age. But then once you're going further up the school, like primary, for example, year 1 to year 2, 2 to 3, they're following the same broad progression. So it's a different way of learning and a different way of teaching. I mean, if you were going to switch from one to other, you're naturally going to see a kind of a little bit of a moment where children are getting to grips with this new methodology and practice. But from experience, that doesn't last that long, and then children catch up again. On a practical level, some schools will kind of do a rolling introduction though. So, they'll introduce power maths for the new year 1s, and then they will go up to year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you'll slowly like move the old course away. I mean, how you do it practically in school terms is up to you. I would say if you're going to do it though, definitely don't do it alone. Don't forget all of the professional development, all of the supporting resources, and all of the things that can help.
Thank you. And we've got time for one more question before we wrap up. So can you incorporate year R1 and year R2?
Yes. So I'm not quite sure what the question is getting at, but the program is designed for 2 years of reception content. So we call that sort of R1 and then on to R2. And then the subscription actually includes that year 1, the first year of our primary teaching as well. So you can see how that progression works. And I would just say that, in different schools, people have started year 1 slightly earlier or later and combined elements from reception 1 and reception 2 and covered them at different stages. And it is definitely flexible and up to you. We're providing a structure and a suggestion, but it's absolutely open to sort of your tailoring to your needs and your setting.
Thank you. And that's all we have time for today. There's lots of been lots of great questions. And if we haven't managed to get round to answering it, feel free to drop us an email and we can answer it after this. The webinar has been recorded, so you will get a copy of it sent to you within the next 24 to 48 hours. And thank you for coming today. And thank you to Kevin and Leah.
And thank you, Jemima.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.